Well, like a surgeon operating, I've got all the cables here taped back out of the way so I can get to my operating area. So now I'm going to put the barrel connectors on the flight controller, run the wires through here, and I think I'm going to go ahead and fix that flight controller down and just start taking one of these wires at a time and putting it where it's supposed to be. I don't know how easy, hard, impossible, whatever, soldering down in that equipment bay is going to be at this point. The first soldering class I had ever in life, I had a metal box about 5 inches by 3 inches by 1.5 inches deep with test points all around it. I had to solder together, and then my instructor put his fingers in the wires, and if he could pull any of them loose, you had to go back and keep working. And when he could no longer pull any of them loose, no matter how hard he pulled, you got to leave for the day. Wasn't the first one out. I wasn't the last one out. I was kind of in the middle. But I did get it after a while. And I don't mind soldering. Don't relish it, but it's just part of this occupation. Electronics technicians have to solder. So let's get started. These are the barrel connectors I'm going to put on the ESC right here, and the wires from the flight controller right here. It was just the simplest way I could figure to do it. And I've got this. I've had this, the jig's up. I've had this for a long time, 10 years or more. You can put your pins you want to solder down in one of these holes and it holds it, or you can put a connector in out here and tighten it down. And this thing is substantially heavy, so I do like this thing. These have 2 holes here, and take them out or whatever. I've got several of those. This came with it too. These are very useful soldering, helping hands, so to speak. If you're soldering, you cannot have enough hands, it seems. You always need a third one minimum. All right, let's go. And I'm going to do something pretty strange here. Instead of using this soldering iron on my solder station, I'm going to use the big one. I mean, it's a huge, I forget how many watt this one is. It's a 60, I think. I don't know. It might be 120. But if you've ever done these connectors on the thick silicone wire, and this isn't that thick, you know how this doesn't like to work. It just soaks the heat, nothing happens, soaks the heat, especially in this big clunk of metal. Only thing I hope is this soldering iron doesn't melt the piece of metal. Just joking. I guess I need to order a soldering iron someplace between this one and this one, you think? Well, that worked well. I checked it out. That's a 120 watt soldering iron. It only took like 2 seconds. I mean, it was fast. Really, really fast and easy. So I've tried to pull them off of there with all my might. I cannot get them off of there. Therefore, they are good. Sure is overkill, but it's quick. And that's all there is to it. I'm not going to touch it right now to try to pull it off of there, but they're both on there. They're both fine. Yeah, like I say, that's 120 watt soldering iron. I'm going to get something down in the 60-watt range to be something in the middle of these two. There's the barrel connector soldered on, ready to stick in there. I felt that was the best way to do it. So now we fix the flight controller down in there, run these wires over there, and then start taking one of these cable bundles, stripping it, soldering the individual wires onto the flight controller. I'm not anxious about how this is going to go. I just really do want to see. I'll know within the first 2 or 3 wires. These wires are going to be easy to put in, and especially these that I put on. That's a single conductor wire. It actually goes through the holes in the board. And so if I'm lucky, I'm going to be able to put the wire in the hole and not have to touch it. I'll have one hand for the soldering iron and one hand for the solder, and a quick touch should do it. But I don't know what's going to happen yet, so I wouldn't call it anxious, but I'm anticipating it. Now we have a slight problem here. This yardstick will bend just a little bit so I can get it over this hump in the middle. But if I put the end that I know's out of sight to you on that side to the CG mark, and put this other end in on the CG mark on this side that you can see, I don't know if you'll notice. Let me see if I can just pick it up. I don't know if you notice that. There we are. The CG splits that equipment bay not in the middle, but in the back third. So that means this is about the center of the flight controller. I don't know where the accelerometers are to know if that's exactly the center of the axis. It's close to it. It's somewhere within this area of right here. But I guess I should put the flight controller as far back in that compartment as I possibly can, even if I have to dig out a little foam right here to accommodate these wires just a little bit, because they're taking up quite a bit of room. This is silicone wire, and it's really tough. Like I say, I've tried every way in the world to pull any of these connectors apart, even these small wires I tried to pull off the board. And you see, I was successful in pulling a solder pad off the board. But I got lucky with that one. It wasn't a V-bat, a bat, or a current wire. It was a ground. And you can pick up grounds pretty good, pretty easily around the board. Picking up the signal. Usually there's just one place for that. So here we go. We're going to stick the ESC wires through the hole in the back and mount that flight controller. Big move.
Someone asked, and this is a good place to talk about this as any, I did not bridge the 9-volt to 12-volt rise pads right here. And I did not bridge at all the VSW pads for 5 volts or 9 volts. Now, my opinion is this VSW being 5 or 9 volts has to do with this pin right here and this pin only, and I don't use it. Although the person that brought it to my attention did say, as it says right here, VSW jumper, one or the other must be bridged. So they pointed out that as a must. I don't know for sure. I looked down otherwise here, and it says VSW jumper, one or more, the other must be bridged again. Otherwise, VSW pad is not getting power. It's not powered. VSW is not only powered for camera 2, it can power other peripherals. So in my humble opinion, what this is saying is otherwise the VSW pad is not powered. Therefore, because I'm not using this at all, I don't have a second camera. Ooh, boy, I did talk about putting a second camera on this, didn't I? But all I have to do is unscrew the top, reach in there with a soldering iron, and bridge one of these in the future if I find it needs to be bridged. The 9-volt rise to 12 up here, I did not do either because, here you go, because the VTX I'm using requires 5 to 36 volts. The camera I'm using, the Phoenix 2, requires 7 to 36 volts or so. This 9 volts is above that. So, but somebody did ask, why didn't you do the solder pads, especially VSW, because it says it must. Yes, it does say that must be bridged. But I do think that must is actually in order for the pad to get any power at all. So I just wanted to address that question here. Okay, let's go back to it.
It's fixed in there now. So I put the double-sided tape on it and put it down right there. I hope it never has to be touched again. And here's my wires with my barrel connectors there for my ESC. And the battery wires wherever they may end up, however they may be cut short, probably will be one of the last things I do. So at this moment right now, I suppose it's time to start soldering individual wires to the flight controller. Now I want you to look at this. I've been getting up the past 2 days, charging batteries, and as the day goes on, it just got windier and windier and windy, more windy. Today, it was windy this morning, so I didn't even charge batteries and knew I had a 2 o'clock dental appointment. And now as I come out to go to the dental appointment, we do have a little wind, but it's fairly still. You can see up a little higher. Well, it quit blowing around just as I zoomed in on it. But ain't that something? The Tron God's messing with me just because I messed with her so much in life. Well, it's 7 o'clock. I got back from my dentist appointment. It was just a teeth cleaning, so no big deal. I think I've done enough for today, and as the next step is soldering up about 30 individual wires and all these solder pads, solder holes. They're through hole pads, but I think I'll just start that fresh on the next day. And so the only thing I've got left to do is solder up these wires, put the top on this, affix my ESC wires to the ESC, glue in the motor, put the ailerons on, put a couple of antennas on, a battery connector. That's about it. I just think as the next step really is to solder up these places is to back off and do it when I'm fresh. It's not been a long day today, but I got a lot done. Thank God JD reminded me today that I don't need to hook but the signal wire from this to the flight controller, which was fortunate because I had forgot that probably don't need the center wire for 100% sure, because the H743 produces its own voltage, and adding voltage on this center wire that usually comes from a BEC and a ESC would be disastrous. I don't want to have to start digging that out the day after I do it. And this is the ESC that came with the kit. They don't tell me anything about it. I don't know if it has a BEC in it or not. I'm going to assume that it does, and because I don't need it, I've already stripped back the 2 wires I don't need to solder onto the flight controller. And JD saved my butt on that one. Like I say, he mentioned that only the signal wire needed to be soldered, and that made me go, yeah, and I didn't even think about the center wire that could be disastrous. So saved my butt on that one. Thank you, sir. Hopefully in the next session this thing will be finished. Might be 2 sessions, but I don't think it's going to be any more than that. Thank you, guys. You're so helpful to me. You keep my butt in line where I can get way off track. Thank you.